Hey, brothers and sisters. Okay, so this is going to be the second half. I have more space on my phone now, so I can go more without breaks. Okay, so I'm hoping to conclude this at least on the focal point of spiritual spouses, their agendas, and how they operate in marriages and families. Okay, so to conclude the dream from the first part, yeah, when these two demons were exposed, showing me what the motives were that were actually operating through my spouse. Um, just want to make clear the first one was a female, and that was his spirit spouse. Okay, that one right there was absolutely jealous of what was happening. It looked at me with complete hatred. It was very jealous of what was happening. Okay, and it was first in line. So it was right there behind him, ready to operate. And the second one behind her, that was right behind her, that was actually a demon of complete filth, debauchery, and homosexuality. Okay, and how this thing differed, other than being male, because it was definitely male, how it differed from the first one, which was absolutely the spiritual spouse, the Jezebel, uh, manifested. And this one, it had like an outer, like head to toe, like from the top of its head all the way down, almost like an armor or a suit that was made out of. It looked like iron, okay, and it had points on it. I don't want to say spikes because they weren't coming directly, poking out, um, like a pincushion, but they were arranged on him so that it looked like if he were to get into something, like a barbed hook, that you would not be able to pull it out. Okay, the same way, have you guys ever seen those, like the arrows? Okay, if you know anything about archery, if you know anything about fishing, the barbed hooks, the ones that are meant to go in easily, to penetrate easily, but they are almost impossible to remove. That's what his exterior looked like. Okay, and I knew what that represented. I knew that represented homosexuality, that level of perversion, that kind of sexuality, sodomy and emasculation. You know what I mean? Just trying to feminize a man, and degradation and filth, and just as much as it could get and as low as it could go. Okay, that's kind of what that one represented. And the first one was all about control, and yeah, was very upset that my spouse was doing what he was doing. She was going to allow it, but it was only going to be limited. Okay, so that was a pretty clear indication and a pretty good representation of what goes on with when you have a spouse, husband or a wife, when you have a spouse that has spiritual spouses of their own, okay, that were more than likely there before you ever even came along, before the two of you got together. It's a foundation, a root issue, okay, like down to the roots. So, for instance, the demon that represented the homosexuality, that had been there literally since childhood. Those enter in, those in particular, they enter in through abuse, and yeah, especially abuse, like from a father and from a stepfather. And the reason I'm saying that is because it's such an attack on masculinity. Its purpose is to uh, belittle and just reduce and take away from a man, to the point that they don't even see themselves as, men anymore, and that right there opens the door for the feminization. That's why the sexualizing of degradation, the sexualizing of, emasculating men, and the attack on gender. There is a purpose for that. There is a spiritual purpose for all this, and it's focused to completely reduce men, to take them out of their places, as husbands, as head of household, and to completely pervert their sexuality. Therefore, they are completely ineffective, and they cause a lot of trauma. We'll just put that out there, okay? It causes a lot of trauma. It destroys not only the host, okay, those entities, they don't just destroy the host, which is inevitable if they're not delivered, if they don't repent, if they don't literally seek the Lord for this, if they don't get delivered, they will consume them unto death. And their whole purpose is condemnation. They want to cause as much trauma and destruction and pain, and they're like shrapnel. They affect everything around it, and hit everything within range, and they hurt and they traumatize, and ultimately it destroys the host the entire time, from the inside out. So I have a couple of notes here. Okay, discuss the fertilization. Okay, so the dual nature. These infestations, they progress. These infestations don't just stay at one level. They will get worse and worse and worse. And they actually will get their host to the point where they are driven insane. Like I said, my ex-spouse and I were married for almost 20 years. And we were just a few years apart. So growing up in our 20s, on up together, and seeing all those milestones, I have seen the degradation that started at one point and grew to the next, or should I say, got to a deeper level that dropped to another level of depravity. And the other thing about these unclean spirits and these spiritual spouses, there is absolutely no cutoff point to the degradation. There's no cutoff point and go, okay, that's low enough. We can't go any further. No, they will actually create new depths and new levels that you didn't even think were possible. So, guys, I know this is talking a lot about the spirit that might manifest. I'm not talking so much about the behaviors that they might demonstrate just yet. I just want to kind of lay the foundation for, hey, this is their purpose, this is why they're doing what they're doing, and this is what they do to the host. So you guys pray for these people. Please pray for your spouses, your ex-spouses. Even if you've moved on, if they've moved on, please continue to pray for them, because that kind of spiritual bondage and oppression, it's not only keeping them from Christ, it's not only keeping them blinded and keeping them bound and oppressed, but it drives them insane. Okay? It takes away their ability to reason correctly. And it's as far away from peace as you could imagine. That's another reason why addiction and, chemical addiction, all drug addictions, and they call them sexual addictions, but it's really just bondage. The sexual addictions and needing that kind of depravity and abuse is literally a manifestation of the unclean spirits within them. Okay, yeah, so continue to pray for your spouse. Pray for them continuously. Forgive them. Trust me, I know that's hard. And for me, it wasn't hard as a lot of other things to forgive. For me, it was having to heal from the pain and the trauma and being hurt. Just the hurt of literally experiencing that from someone that you truly loved. Okay, that you truly loved, because you have a heart that was capable of love from the beginning, and that's what you gave. Most of us didn't know that our spouses were as sick as they were when we got with them. And that's the other thing is, there's a saying, guys, called cover life, cover wife. And I'm sure there is another version of that, for men describing female spouses like this. But that's what it's called, when a man with homosexual tendencies, or is pretending to be heterosexual at all, and he's actually not, because he's ashamed or because he's battling with things. Of course, if he's battling with homosexuality, he's absolutely battling with identity issues. So yeah, the cover life, cover wife thing, that was a big part of this in my experience. And I would often have the question, why didn't you choose somebody? That was more like the people that you look for, when you're, either having an affair behind my back, or a person you prefer because they're nothing like me. They're nothing like, what you keep coming back to at all. And before I understood this, as well as I do today, and the things I understand now, the spiritual aspects of it, I would often ask him that. We'd get fights. Why are you with me? Why don't you just choose somebody? You keep gravitating towards those types of people. And part of that is because infidelity, that spiritual spouse that is with them constantly, that spiritual spouse that has a legal right to be there, okay, that they carry with them and that operates within them because they're a willing conduit, that thing loves, okay, to, they love infidelity, okay, and that's exactly what they are steering and gearing and giving urges for, and, those kinds of thoughts and those, just kind of moving. It just shifts. It shifts from being, bad and something negative, infidelity being negative and being traumatic. And this demon will sexualize that and actually make it a turn on so that it stops being shameful whatsoever. It's like a cauterizing of the conscience. Yeah, it's just like a cauterizing effect. And it sexualizes everything, especially trauma, because it wants its host to affect everybody around it, especially a human spouse, because they feel territorial. They don't want their host to actually be married to anyone. They want to be number one. They want it to be focused on them, and they are incredibly territorial, and they will operate and destroy your marriage if you don't know they're there, and if the person carrying them is not aware or won't won't do their part and actually face the destruction they're causing, and admit that, hey, we have a problem here. If they just keep, just kind of plowing ahead, and don't ever stop and look at these things and admit these things, then yeah, that's exactly that's the way that demon manifests, okay? That spiritual spouse, that Jezebel. So, oh yeah, the dual nature. Okay, the other ironic part of this is that a person that suffers from narcissism and they are abusive with their spouse and family is, you'll notice this in their nature, in their personality, and it gets worse over time. They are very arrogant, they're very conceited, and very high-minded, even if they're completely dead wrong. It doesn't matter. Just the absolute inability. It's a complete lack of humility. There's absolutely no humility whatsoever. Okay, so it's an arrogant attitude, and it's kind of an air they put on all the time. But at the same time, the flip mode of that, the duality, is that they actually hate themselves. They hate themselves, and they will encourage and allow and seek out opportunities to be degraded, to be demeaned, to be abused, and on some of the most horrendous levels. And it's usually involving sex. Okay, it's usually involving sex. Now, that the second demon that I brought up, that was in my dream, that was behind the spirit of Jezebel, that spirit spouse, that was, the really abusive one, the homosexuality, the degradation, the absolute filth, the dehumanizing. Because this thing it was not human, okay? It was just completely dehumanizing. So yeah, those two go together. So it's this really odd dual nature of, arrogance and high-mindedness and pride. And then exactly on the other flip side of that is they hate themselves, and they'll allow others, and they'll encourage, and do things with themselves and have other people do to them that are completely degrading. And there's no limit to that. Here's the other thing. It's such a sickness, there's no limit. Okay, I'll just go ahead and share this because I'll never share his name, okay, just for his own anonymity. But just to let you know, and if anybody can relate to this, you'll understand it, okay? Because these entities are deliberately, okay, assigned, to marriages and to connections that surround God's children. That's why marriages with the unsaved and the saved, that's always a risk. that you'll have because of that. Because of that connection being unequally yoked. Now I know sometimes your spouse, like in the Bible, will actually come to salvation because of watching your walk and your journey, and I know that happens. But I'm just saying it's a risk for marrying someone that's not saved. Okay, so the duality. Okay, sorry guys, I'm looking at my notes here. Okay, so I know I just kind of skipped around for a second. I lost my place, but let me just go and bring up the father aspect of this. Usually, and I'm not saying all the time, because sometimes narcissists, they're so prideful that they think anything that comes from them is perfect as well. Like it reflects directly on them. So sometimes they can be really good fathers, but usually, and I've heard this from other people too, narcissists, they are not good fathers. Yeah, they're not good fathers. So that level of connection was just kind of non-existent, and the reason is because narcs, we'll call them narcs for short, narcissists they don't have the ability to connect. It's impossible for them to make an actual connection. They can't do it with their spouses, they can't do it with their own children, they don't do it with anyone. And the reason is because they don't have that part in them, okay, that's functioning properly. It's been so cauterized that they don't even have the empathetic, they don't have the compassion, they don't have anything in them that actually feels like it puts you at a level that they want to give you respect, and they want to they want to make sure your needs are met, because it's all about them. It's all about them, okay? And as this illness grows, or as that entity kind of goes to the next level and progresses, and just like a cancer, and in later stages, it is so detrimental to every relationship that even their children will have to cut them off, because when the children finally do wake up and their eyes are opened and they understand the abuse and they can see the tactics and they can see the manipulation, and when all these things start to be revealed, what will happen to the narcissistic father is, once he realizes that the mask has been pulled off and that he has been exposed, he'll actually retract. Okay, he'll usually, now sometimes they'll throw a big fit in the beginning, but when you start requiring, especially the adult children, when they start getting grown up and start calling them out for the neglect and the abuse and the manipulation, when they realize that, hey, that one's got me figured out, like, oh man, my old ways are not going to work with this one anymore, it's called a narcissistic supply. Okay, once they realize that their supply, that person they fed off of, no matter who it is, spouse or children or whoever, but whoever showed them the most love, around them, that love the facade, okay, that image and that persona that they hid behind, when the people that are actually capable of love actually showed that to them once, and that's their supply, because they don't have that. They're not capable of having that. They need healing and deliverance. Okay, so once their supplies have been cut off, they have no more use for these people. They have no more use to engage with you. They're not going to be getting what they wanted out of it. They're not going to be getting their insatiable, egotistical needs met anymore, or sexual needs. And once those things are cut off, it's called discarding. Okay, so they can, if you ever wondered why, hey, they were all hot and heavy, or they were love bombing me, and then they just, we had this falling out, I told them this, that, and then they just literally ghosted me. There's a reason for that. Okay, when the mask is pulled off and the truth is revealed, they're out, because that's the one thing that a narc fears the most, is being exposed. Okay, and because I think there's a saying in the Bible, and I'm probably butchering this, guys, but I think there's a saying that says, empty barrels make the loudest noise. Okay, so yeah, we'll do a part 2, or I'm sorry, a part 3 to this, because we'll talk about the family dynamics and the healing. Okay, so I love you guys very much, and I hope this helped somebody. I hope it just wasn't a bunch of rambling, just to kind of let all this, just to kind of let all this out was You know, it was a big step for me, but I want it to help. Okay, I just want to help. So I love you guys and talk to you soon. Bye bye.